Welcome to BG5 Live. This is episode 8, July 9th. So BG5 Live is the show for human design professionals, students, and enthusiasts who want a deeper understanding of how to apply human design to business so they can thrive in their careers and support their clients, clients in doing the same. So hey there, I'm Mike Brown. I'm a BG5 teacher, small business coach, human design analyst, and I specialize in BG5 career sessions and personalized coaching sessions. And my host, Vanessa.
Hey everyone, I'm Vanessa, and I am a student of BG5 in the process of getting certified as a consultant right now. And I am a lover of human design and everything that relates to it. Super excited to be here.
Vanessa, to say you're a lover of human design is a little bit of a understatement with you.
Yes, I'm obsessed with it.
Vanessa's a deep diver like no one's business. It's really cool to watch. So what's up for today? We have a unique title, Connecting with Your Design in Difficult Times. So that's really unusual for us, Vanessa. We haven't sort of branched out in new ways. But in case you don't know, Vanessa had the experience of living through and experiencing a hurricane. And so she was very mindful of the process of going through the hurricane and really relying on and connecting with her design. So this is going to be a fascinating discussion with Vanessa. We don't have a guest today, but we have lots to talk about. So we'll be talking about daily transits. I'll do a little segment and Vanessa will show us what's coming our way. Vanessa, you're turning into quite the weather forecaster for us. So I'm really excited for that. Before I begin, Vanessa, tumultuous week last week. So I woke up, I think I totally underestimate. So I go through this podcast every 2 weeks with you and you show me the weather and I had no inkling of what was showing up. So the 39, so we're talking in BG5 human design terminology. So that is a transit coupled with this trait 38 that completely hooked me up with my drive stamina, my emotions, my survival instinct. So I think about a week ago Sunday, my body was just vibrating and it lasted the whole week. And I thought it would die down as the time was going on. No, it was just, it's so the reason I'm telling you this weird little story is because, you know, knowing the transits, knowing that, you know, certain configurations can really sort of amp me up. Once I began to know about it, my mind calmed down a little bit. But it took me about 2 days before it's like, what is going on? So, all right, we got some big news today also. Let me see here. We're expanding. So right now we are just on YouTube. I say that a little funnily, you know, just on YouTube. I never thought, Vanessa, that we would be actually, you know, like we'd be on YouTube. And now we're expanding. We're branching out into the world of podcasts. So Vanessa informs me. Go ahead. Take it away.
Yeah, so we are already there. We are live on both Spotify and Apple at BG5 Live. So you can listen to these episodes at any time on the podcast. If you're unable to make it live, if you're unable to watch it on YouTube, if you want to tune in while you're driving to work or whatever, we are live on the podcasts as of now. First few episodes have been released. The remainder are dripping out over the next few days, and you'll be able to listen to this one on there as well.
Did you ever dream that we would be doing this so quickly? I had no inkling. I don't know about you.
Well, you know me, I do everything quickly.
Yes. So we have again, I'd like to shout out, we have a team behind us and Sarah, Alina and Stephen who sort of, you know, keep things going for us. Vanessa and I, we're just the front people. We do our thing here, but we have a wonderful team with the BG5 Live, um, and the BG5 school sort of administrators helping us do all this. So we couldn't do this alone. We appreciate you. And thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us. So here's our Vanessa. I feel like we should have, when we look at Vanessa's chart, we should have like extreme intuitive emotional express builder, man, because she can get stuff done like no one's business. And here's me, little old me, always looking at all of that openness compared to Vanessa's. So just as a little tidbit, I like to drop in these sort of design when you look at charts. Whenever you see a chart like this one, when you see all of those white spaces, you know that this is someone who is very sensitive to the world around them. Whereas with Vanessa, she is someone who's broadcasting a lot of energy out into the world. So she has a lot to contribute, and I have a lot to take in. So it's kind of funny. We're on the polar ends of the spectrum, you and I, Vanessa.
And also for those that are listening and they didn't actually get to see our charts, Mike is a 2-4 public role, that's profile in human design, express builder, which is manifesting generator, and his strength is the unconscious 3420 of charisma. So that is his one strength and channel, meaning his energy resource and his communication and action, the sacral center and the throat center, those two functions are defined for him, and all of the rest are undefined. I am a 5-1 public role or profile. Wait for clarity, express builder. So that's an emotional manifesting generator in human design. And I have all of my functions or all of my centers defined except for my inspiration function or the head center, which is completely open. So we do share a lot of companionship in our two designs. We are the same career type. We have our public roles or profiles are in harmony, and we share the strength 3420. We share the defined communication and action and energy resource functions. And we also share our completely, well, in my case, completely undefined inspiration function or head center.
Have I asked you what that's like for you to have so much definition below, and then up top, it's completely open? So by the way, so I'll just say this really quick, Vanessa. So when you have a completely open function, it's an extra level of sensitivity in that particular function. So Vanessa, how do you experience that?
So one, I'm inspired all the time and by everything, very easily distracted by these things. I do feel like that shadow of having to answer everybody's questions and thinking about things that don't matter definitely comes up for me. And in addition to my completely open inspiration function, my cross is the transpersonal cross of distraction. So distraction is definitely a theme, which might always sound like a shadow. However, there are times when it is beneficial, and I'll talk about that later because this did come up during the hurricane as well, or especially after the hurricane, where I needed some distraction. And that helped me get back into a more centered place.
Yeah, thanks. That was really clear. So Vanessa is completing her BG5 studies. So you can hear, so she's gone through 2 foundation classes. She's gone through 3 certification. So she's on a tail end, almost the tail end of her studies. So you can hear her deftness, like her ease of being able to, use keynotes and be able to describe in a very conversational way. So if you're thinking about studying BG5, you'll go through a pretty rigorous process of learning everything that's in a chart, and then also how to explain it in a very fluid way, the way Vanessa is doing for us.
And for those of you that don't know the difference between BG5 and human design, so BG5 is specifically geared towards career and business, and the language is different. So the language in BG5 is is more practical and geared towards the business community. So for example, instead of centers, we call them functions. This is how you function. Instead of channels, we call them strengths. These are your strengths. Instead of gates, we call them traits. These are traits that you have. Instead of lines, we call them qualities. These are the qualities that give nuance to your traits. So it's a different language that is more, it's easier to integrate for people that don't know anything about human design, that are in the business world and need that very practical language.
Yeah. I wasn't part of that process when the school sort of transitioned the language, but I really agreed. It is very business friendly, because there's a lot of people who don't want to do the work of learning or translating the human design. So today's weather. So let's take a quick look. Vanessa, I'm going to do a little annotating here. Just to we'll just do this really quick. So this is today. One of the reasons we like to do this every session is to help you not only understand what's happening, on a day-to-day basis, but if you were to look at a chart like this for today's daily transits, this is some of the things you should look for. And so you can begin to understand how it impacts you. That's the big question. So today, like Vanessa said, this is what's called the third quality day. Third quality is a little challenging. So if you're experiencing trial and error, if you're bumping into things or bumping into people, that could be physically or metaphorically, or, you're sort of like just moving through and things aren't just flowing. That's one of the reasons why whenever you see a third, in human design terminology, we call it third line, and BG5, we call it third quality. That's probably one of the things that you're going to notice. So Vanessa, 2 weeks ago, she talked about the 53 as one of those places that, so the 53 is at the top of this column. So you see the personality. So it's what we're going to be conscious of. So the 53 is the beginning, the start of new learning journeys. So that's seated. So if you're looking at the human design body graph, you'll see a column of shapes. At the very bottom, right in the middle, is the drive stamina. So you see this 53 here, kind of looks very small, but it has one of those places where big impact. So the 53 starts us on new learning journeys. So if you feel this drive, this push to begin something new, that's probably one of the places you're experiencing it. And the 54 right below, this is the grounding aspect of today's transits. This is the drive for material success. So if your drive stamina function is defined, it's colored in, this is going to be a factor for you, more so than if you have it completely open. So if you're finding yourself more amped up, more sort of feeling this energy to do something new, that's probably why. One more thing to look at here is this strength, this 1648. That's the strength of talent. It's the ability to start practicing something and you get better and better and better over time. I think of this as like one of those, I call it, my secret way of describing the 1648 of talent is the Zen master path. So in Zen, you practice something over and over and over until you get better with it. So those are our transits for today. We're going to turn it over to Vanessa. You're going to take us into our cosmic weather.
All right. So we actually went over trait 53 last time. So we're going to start with trait 62, which will be going into transit on July 12th at 12 p.m. Eastern time. Now, this trait sits on top of the communication and action function, which is the throat center in human design. This is the square that is the third from the top, and the 62, if you're looking at it, is on the left side of that square, pointing upwards. This is part of the sharing, logical, cognitive, understanding, thematic, and it is the voice and the trait of details. When somebody has this defined, and we all get to experience it as the sun transit, this is the voice that says, I think, and this is about naming, concretizing, and communicating visual patterns. It says, I think I have an opinion based on the formulas, based on the doubts and the suspicions that might have been presented. So again, this is the logic thematic. This is very much the logical thematic is about the past, things that have repeated themselves in the past, the patterns of the past that help us predict the future. There can be a knack for organizing details in order to better understand and explain complex concepts or situations. And the logical expression here can make these difficult concepts easier to understand so that they can be tested, validated, or invalidated by others. So there's an ability here to verbally address complicated situations with clear and appropriate and well-organized information that increases conceptual understanding. People that have this can often speak clearly with intelligence. And one thing you want to be careful of, and I'm the expert at this because I actually have this trait defined, and I also have the first quality in my public role is compulsively sharing facts and details when they are unwanted or unnecessary to avoid misunderstanding. So in my past, I've been really good at oversharing, giving too much information, too many details because I love them and it doesn't work for everybody. So this is also a projected strength. So you definitely want to be asked. You want to be recognized, invited, and asked in order to increase your effectiveness and being understood and accepted as you go through this transit and all the time if you have this trait defined. Anything for you on that one, Mike?
Well, I live with a 1762, so I get to experience the logical sharing. So I think 1762s are fascinating to me because they have this ability to assimilate information in a very logical way and kind of explain it. I also like that you brought in this kind of visual. So having visuals for 1762s, this organizational way of looking at life is very helpful, very helpful. And I would also agree that there's a timing to share your understandings that, you know, it helps relationships. I'll say that. Would you add anything else?
No, I think that's it on that one.
All right.
All right, so the next one, I'm very excited about this one because it is my conscious core essence, meaning my birthday is coming up. Actually, on our next BG5 Live will be my birthday or my solar return. Actually, my actual solar return will be the day before, but this is trait 56 of stimulation. This is also on the communication and action function, which is the throat center, and it is on the right side pointing up. So directly opposite from the 62. This is part of the sharing abstract cognitive experiences thematic. This is sometimes known as the storyteller. And remember, we're all going to be experiencing this as the sun transits through it. If you have this defined or colored in your chart, this is going to be a consistent experience for you. And if you have it undefined, then this is an opportunity for you to become really wise about this energy because you get to experience it in all of the different ways that it presents. And it presents in 1,080 different ways. That's a lot of different ways that you get to experience it in. So this is about the voice that says, I believe, in expressing ideas and visions in ways that create curiosity. This is part of the strength of curiosity. It can bring out emotions in others because the way that you are sharing your experiences, this is in the sharing thematic, the experiences of your own life and or the life of others. People that have this, and actually Mike also has this defined, are natural storytellers that use their own past experiences in order to illustrate concepts and to stimulate others. We love getting reactions out of people, and this can happen by adding variety and color and filling in the gaps. And I sometimes like to say about myself, like, I love to over-exaggerate sometimes, and occasionally I have to actually like provide a disclaimer that I'm actually not over-exaggerating something when I am not. So this fun stuff. The stories are a journey over time, and They're designed to encourage the formation of ideas and beliefs. People that have this trait defined, especially when they don't have the entire strength, which I do not, are always hungry for new ideas to express, so that they can call attention to their stories. I know this is absolutely true for me. This is more of a casual historian rather than a more formal one, because the details aren't necessarily there unless you have that trait also defined. And this is about experiences, seeking to explore and reflect on the experiences that you've had. These can be subjective and selective. So this is not necessarily based on facts, but how the person sharing their story actually experienced it subjectively. This thematic does include, the entire thematic includes the emotional intelligence function, or the emotional solar plexus. So there is an emotional aspect to this, and emotions and feelings will influence the experiences that you seek and that you share with others. The stories, what is taught about life through this trait, come from the interpretation of the experiences tinged with the emotional overtones of what you are experiencing. So that is coming up on July 18th. I'm super excited about it. My conscious core essence, I think it's your is it your driving force, I believe, conscious,
Yeah,
if I'm correct?
yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I have a funny story. Do you want to hear
yes, it's appropriate.
it? It is. I have the 56, uh, like Vanessa was saying. So my story is that long time ago, I was working in a school system in the United States, and my boss was retiring. And so we had this big retirement party. We went to this, this nice kind of country club atmosphere, and we're just, a bunch of teachers and I get asked to speak, and totally off the cuff, like just spontaneous. I started telling all these stories about, my boss, and they were really funny. They sort of like, hit these right notes. And, I tended, it wasn't actually so factual. I was stretching the truth a little bit. And so this teacher who's very logical would come up to me afterwards, just like, this story, and that story that you just told, none of them were true. I was like, well, they were kind of true, but what I was shooting for was to just get people to laugh about it. It went off really well. And it was totally like what you just read here, that it was, some of it was factual, some of it was a little stretch. And I also recognize again that bottom bullet point that you were talking about, the 56, and I didn't know this for the longest time, but a lot of the things that I'll share with people are to hit certain emotional notes that, I want to sort of bring home a lesson or a story. I want to bring home a lesson through a story. And that's, I think, where it beautifully comes from the 56. It's really cool to watch your design just living itself through you. Do you experience that?
Oh, yes. And like, especially with the 56, when I first learned about this being my conscious presence, I was like, I don't really think like I'm that great at that. But then I reflected back on life, and I've also heard this referred to as like the comedian. And I've definitely had people tell me in my youth, like, you'd be a great comedian. And then there were also times where, after I became aware of this, where I was literally in the middle of sharing a lesson, a story from something I experienced with somebody else who was seeking me out for advice. And as it was coming through, I was like, that's the 56. So it is like being really aware of your design as you're experimenting with it, and these things that come through. And this was so true for me in the hurricane too. It's just amazing to like deepen that understanding of how this actually shows up for you in an embodied way.
Mm, yeah. And you were mentioning, so the 56 on the other side of that strength is the 11. So the 56 is stimulation, kind of tell you're the storyteller, but the 11 is ideas, like Vanessa was talking about. I'd love to hear your perspective. I feel like I'm an idea factory, just ideas pop in on a continuous basis. But I don't know if it's so much that I'm thinking about something and the idea pops in, or there's just an openness. So when you look at this on a slide here, if you're listening to the podcast, you can't see this, but when you see half a strength defined and the other part open, I think of that in some ways as a way to receive. So I do have a conscious process of allowing ideas to show up. It's almost as if I have this intention, like, okay, I need an idea for this, and then at some point it drops in. Do you experience anything like that?
So it's interesting. And of course, the difference in our two designs is that my conceptualization or ajna function is defined through the 1762 and yours is undefined. I do, and I've always felt like I have a lot of ideas. Yet when it's time for like, I want some ideas from myself, I notice I go into that unhealthy expression of the defined conceptualization where I'm trying to figure it out or I'm trying to force an idea and just being aware of that. And I know who the 11s are in my life and I will go to them when the time comes. I know who's got trait 11, and if I feel like I need an idea that's for me, that is who I go to, because trying to force the ideas and trying to figure it out is never works for me.
That's well said. I like that one too. Find the 11s. Find someone on the other side that you don't have. Say, hey, help me here. Okay, we're gonna change gears, Vanessa. You are our star for the show, so we're gonna welcome Vanessa, the storyteller. But Vanessa's story, I've already heard it, and it really touched my heart. So I'm hoping that you get to experience the same thing. So Vanessa, you're gonna be our storyteller. Vanessa, I have some images for you. Why don't you give us a sort of background of what was happening for you last week?
All right. So for those that are listening, the image that we have up right now is Hurricane Beryl as it was passing over the Windward Islands. And I live in Grenada, West Indies. It is the southernmost of the Windward Islands. It is a small tri-island nation of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. The eye of Hurricane Beryl passed directly over Carriacou, and that island is completely destroyed. I believe I've heard as much as 98% of the homes lost their roofs, and the hurricane hit, today's July 9th, it hit us on July 1st, so a little over a week ago. They have done amazing in doing everything they can to get it set back up. And I believe most of it, like there's still a lack of power. It's just absolutely devastating. The northern part of Grenada also got hit pretty hard. I'm in the very south of Grenada, where we got extremely lucky because we had very minimal damage here. We actually got our power back the same day. When you drive around here, you can see we did have some property damage on the outside, but nothing on the inside. And when you drive around, you can see, okay, there's some trees down. A lot of the banana trees are down, some power lines, but nothing. You can tell there was an event here, but it's not like the devastation that has taken place in our sister islands and the north of Grenada. So the image that is up right now points out, for those of you listening, Grenada and the very bottom of the Windward Islands, close to Trinidad and Tobago and very close to Venezuela.
Can we give an orientation of where Grenada is? So for our listeners who don't have this map up, can you orient us where Grenada?
Grenada, yes.
Grenada.
So
Can you orient us?
if you're looking, we are basically below the Virgin Islands. We are the furthest southern island of the Windward Islands, which includes Barbados. So people will tend to know where that is. And we are very close to Venezuela. So Venezuela is the closest mainland to where we are. And it's about a 3-hour and 45-minute flight south from Miami.
So Miami is one of the on the east coast of the United States. It's at pointing down, and then below that is Cuba, and then to the right of that is the Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and then you see this kind of fishtail of islands, and Grenada is on the lowest fishtail, like Vanessa was saying. So it came through a week ago. You were able to get back power, but what was happening for you during the time of the hurricane? Can you give us a little?
So I actually think starting before the hurricane is a really good example of my design. So I am a 5-1 public role. That is the messenger authority or the heretic investigator in human design. And that first quality or first line is really strong in me. Security, having information, feeling secure. I also, in human design terms, have fear motivation. I like to have a lot of information in order to feel secure. Now, I moved to Grenada partially because it is below the hurricane belt. So hurricanes are fairly rare here. We had the last major one was in 2004, Hurricane Ivan, which completely destroyed the island of Grenada. The previous one before that was in 1950, Hurricane Janet. So very, very few and far between compared to islands that are north of us. However, during every hurricane season, which goes from June 1st to November 30th, I am all over the National Hurricane Center website. Now, this website updates at 2 a.m., 8 a.m., 2 p.m., and 8 p.m., and it lets you know if there's any kind of quote unquote systems coming off through the Atlantic. And it gives you an estimate of how likely they are to develop, what the track might be. During hurricane season, I check this site constantly to see what's developing, where it might be going. I'm also extremely prepared in the sense that even before the season starts, I make sure that I'm stocked up on all the necessities like non-perishable food, water, all the things that you would like to have in the event of a disaster like this. So these were all things that I already had in place. Now, I also have a bunch of weather apps on my phone because I like to have all that information. And I have some that are very specific that, again, with the hurricanes, they'll show you different weather models, what track they are expected to go into, what time they are going to be arriving where. And these were all things that I was already checking. Of course, we knew this system was coming through days earlier. You usually get a week, several days advance notice. In our case, most often the track of the hurricane starts to shift north before it gets here. But in this particular case, it started to become pretty clear that Grenada was going to be a direct hit. I think this was like around Saturday night. It was like, yeah, it's not shifting north. Like we're right smack in the middle of the track. It is likely coming here. So Sunday morning when I woke up, so I do have, wait for clarity, decision-making strategy, or emotional authority. I am emotionally defined. And Saturday or Sunday morning, the day before I woke up, I also have a defined survival instinct or spleen. I woke up feeling absolutely terrified and highly emotional. And I just started to cry because I was really scared about what is going to come to us. How is everybody going to be affected? What are things going to be like tomorrow after this passes? Are my family and my loved ones going to be safe? Like all of this stuff came up for me. I was just terrified and crying. And I reached out to my community. I do have the strength of community and my support system, and just to let them know how I am feeling. And I allowed myself to go through that period to feel those emotions. And once that passed, I immediately jumped into my fifth quality, practical solutions in times of crisis, and just preparing everything. That it was definitely coming. It was going to be there the next morning. And I went into that place of like, I need to prepare for what is to come. And that was basically my next step. So yeah.
Wow. I think for most of us who don't live in Hurricane Alley, we can't even imagine what that experience is like.
Well, I've never experienced a hurricane before either. I've been here for over 3 years now. We had one or two quote unquote systems come through where it was, rain and some wind and maybe some thunder, but I never experienced a hurricane myself, even though I've always been prepared for them. So it was definitely terrifying. And, one thing you always have to consider in the event of this happening is where are you going to shelter if it gets really bad? And my partner, my boyfriend, and I had kind of planned for this. And at his house, he has a storage area that is completely concrete with a concrete roof. And obviously, like our plan was initially like, we're going to ride this out together. My apartment also has a concrete roof, but I'm higher up. He's in a valley and I have windows. south and west, large windows. So that could be a little bit iffy, and I am overlooking the ocean, so I would get direct wind. So original plan was to go over to his house. However, what I came to realize was that if we were going to shelter at his place, and if it got really bad, that would be 3 adults, 2 dogs, and a really crazy cat who absolutely hates my dog with like a mad passion, sheltering in this tiny little storage space for God knows how long. And honestly, like the cat, I was like, I know this is scarier to me than the hurricane. So luckily I had another option. If I didn't have any other options, I would have figured it out, but I had an option here. The property where I live, there's actually an empty apartment that has it's below the property, so it's lower down, and it has bathrooms that are no windows. All of the walls are interior, and just one door that is not facing the front. And I was like, this is going to be probably the best place to shelter if it gets bad in this particular place where I live. The roof definitely won't come off. There are several stories above it. Worst case scenario, like a window or a door might blow in, but the bathroom is going to be the safest place. So that's where I decided to shelter. I, of course, did more research. That bathroom has a glass door and a glass mirror. I learned that those could, even if they don't get impacted by anything, could still shatter. So I wrapped those up in sheets and tape and just made sure that even if they shatter, I would be as protected as I could be from the glass in the event of that happening. Moved everything down there. I was able to spend the night down there. There's nobody in that apartment. My landlord was totally fine with that. Moved my dog down there. All the food that we might need in the event that it was really disastrous, batteries, flashlights, phone chargers, like everything. I packed all of my valuables in plastic bags, put them in my bathroom, which would have been the safest, driest place in my apartment, elevated them. And that evening, Sunday evening, I went into that downstairs apartment to shelter and prepared for the next day. I knew the storm was coming in the morning, and I did my best to get the best sleep that I could, because I knew that sleep was going to really serve me well in the event of tragedy the next day.
So you prepared in an amazing way. You sort of thought of all the contingencies. And then at some point, with the recognition that this is actually happening, you went through a strong emotional response. You kind of rode through it. And then you came back and said, okay, I'm safe. I got a plan, and started reaching out to the community. So I was one of those people who was communicating with you, and you were sort of right on it, giving updates. And I really appreciated that, because I was worried here in Boston for you. But you kind of allayed my fears, which is interesting. You're going through it, and I'm up here in sort of summer weather. What was the experience for you afterwards? Because I noticed that you have the 2750, this caring custodianship, wanting to take care of people, feeling the sense of responsibility. So Grenada didn't really get so impacted, but like you said earlier, your sister islands, what was that experience like for you, knowing that other people close by, proximity wise, geographically, didn't fare so well?
Yeah, it is still really painful. And with that first quality public role, I was really, while we still had, our power did go out, but we did have internet access for a while. I was constantly on that app that showed exactly where the storm was and where it was heading. And when I was seeing the eye is going over Carriacou, there was almost a sense of guilt of like, okay, the southern part, like it's not that bad down here. Like part of me is grateful, like we're going to be okay, but also feeling absolutely terrible because I knew how bad it was going to be up there, and just constantly tracking that. Oh, my goodness. And then after, when the images and the news started coming in from Carriacou, it was devastating. And I will say, I am glad that I was as prepared as I was from the perspective. One of the things that I like to hoard, I attribute this partially to my trait 39, is toilet paper. Because like many of you listening, I did live through the great 2020 COVID-19 toilet paper shortage in the US, and you will never find me with less than at least 2 full packages of toilet paper, plus whatever's left from the previous package. And my hoarding kind of came into handy because the next morning, on Tuesday, everything was closed in Grenada. You know, people were recovering and doing all their own cleanup. And already people were getting ready to take supplies to Carriacou. And they were asking for people to drop off anything that they had in terms of water, canned food, toilet paper, like sanitary stuff, all of it. So I was able to, that morning, just pack up bags of the stuff that I already had to drop off to send to Carriacou immediately because I was so well stocked. It is still, when I watch the images come in still, and I have friends in Carriacou that lost everything, their homes, their businesses, like their boats, which were part of their business, like literally lost everything except for their lives, which is obviously the most important thing. But watching the images come in is just heartbreaking. And one of the things that I find so amazing about Grenada and the Grenadian people, and you guys can watch this on YouTube if you want. There's a guy, a storm chaser. His name is Jonathan something, but he literally comes down to these places to experience the hurricane, and he does documentaries about them. Apparently, he did a whole documentary about Ian. He came down to Carriacou and he had a Starlink, so he had internet access, and he immediately started posting videos about interviewing the people, showing what happened, asking for people to bring aid. And when you saw all the people that he was interviewing down there, and this is what Grenada is like. Everybody had lost everything and everybody had a smile on their face because they were grateful to be alive and they were resilient and knew that they could rebuild. And watching that, it's just, I'm so amazed by these people. I can't even tell you. And the inspiration to like help and support in any way that I can. And I have made multiple grocery store trips and, you know, donated to the GoFundMe's, and I'm going to be volunteering, just doing whatever I can to support the rebuilding of my community is obviously a big part of the support thematic, which is, well, the support, tribal circuitry, protection, the defense circuit, which I have. The defense circuit is a total of 6 traits, and I have 5 activations in it. And one of them is a bridging trait of mine to bridge the split or the collaborative assimilation in my design. So it's a really, really big one for me.
Okay, so 2 final questions for you. So the first is, what, if any, advice would you give to someone to how to use their design in a way during very stressful times? So that's the first question. Second question would be, how, if we want and feel called and respond to giving aids to people in that area, how would they do it? So first question is, what advice?
So yeah, for the first question is just being as present as possible to what is coming up for you. You know, if you have defined survival instinct, just follow your intuition, like trust that what it's telling you is correct. Be present to it, because with that survival instinct, it speaks quietly in the moment. If you're not present to it, you can't hear it. Also with, you know, with the emotional definition, like it's going to impact your wave very likely, especially if you have the tribal wave, which is what I have. Knowing that this is your wave, writing it out, trying to not get lost in the lows of it, and coming into the present moment, into your body as much as you can, allowing yourself to feel what you are feeling so that it can flow through you. Of course, if you have a lot of openness in your design, you're also going to be picking up all of this stuff from the other people around you. If you have the possibility of taking time alone in your own aura to release what isn't yours so that you can really tune into your own design and who you are, that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. You totally read my mind. So when we look here on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you have a lot of openness in your design, like Vanessa said, I cannot emphasize how important it is to find space away from others, if only to just really come back to yourself. During intense times, people experience intense emotions, intense anxiety, intense, mental processing, all of that. And so the more openness you have, the more sensitive you are to others' frequencies. And when you can come back, so allow those frequencies to drain out, empty out, you can find your center back again. And Vanessa,
I think it's also important to note that, in the event, like right now, people in Kyiv were like 80 people in a shelter. Obviously, finding your own auric space in those situations, or especially while you're going through something like this, where you can't go outside, like you need to stay in this confined space with a group of people. If you have a lot of that openness, really just tuning into what is your design, and being aware that a lot of the things that you're picking up are not you. I think just that awareness can probably be really helpful when you're in that situation where you cannot go into your own auric space. And if you are very defined, just remembering that what you are broadcasting is influencing others as well, and just doing your best to really ground into your own design, and just being aware of what you're broadcasting and supporting others to the best of your ability.
good advice, good suggestions. If people wanted to send their support to Grenada and islands around there.
So I have a link, and we can put this in the show notes on the podcast and YouTube. That is a conglomeration of all of the different places that you can support the Southeastern Caribbean right now, with very reliable resources. Not, there's a lot of scammers that tend to come out at these times. So the things on this will give you a lot of different options. There are places all over the US and Europe where you can actually donate supplies that are going to Grenada and the Grenadines, the Southeastern Caribbean, as well as places where you can donate funds if that is possible for you. So we will add that in the show notes and in the YouTube description.
Thanks, Vanessa. Anything else
Thank
before
you.
we sign off?
Yeah, I do want to just share one more thing about trait 28. So trait 28 is my unconscious grounding balance. And this is one of the fear traits. It sits on the survival instinct, or the spleen center. And this is the fear of death. And this came up for me very strongly. And in the past, this has never been the fear of my own death. It has always been the fear of the death of my loved ones and things, places that I love. And that one really strongly came up for me during this experience. So I just wanted to share that for people that wonder or have trait 28 defined, which I believe you also have it. Mike, do you have it?
Yeah.
Yeah, about the different ways that you could experience some of those fears. So that was one of mine.
Yeah. Wow. That's a, and let me try to frame this. That's a very inspiring story in the sense of what you just said, which was going through the process in a really mindful way. So I had this sense that you were scared, you were emotional, a lot was happening, and you were present to the whole experience. And that made a really big difference. So congrats to you in this, again, in the sense of doing this in a really mindful way, which when we think about design, when we think about, human design, we talk about strategy and authority, and your ability to be present, to notice, is the thing that activates your design. And so Vanessa's story is a great highlight for that. So Vanessa, thank you so much for telling that story. I really, really appreciate it. And I got to see and hear and experience another side of you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. And thank you for being part of my support system. I was definitely, there was a lot of WhatsApping going on with my community outside of Grenada during this. So I really appreciate that. And also, before we go, I want to let everybody know we do record these live over Zoom. So if you want to ever pop on and be here with us, if you have any questions or anything that you want to contribute, you can do that. And we will let you know how to do that in the show notes. And if you are watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. It really helps us. If you are listening on the podcast, a review also makes a giant difference for us, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. If you have any suggestions, any guests you want to sort of point us towards, any ideas that you would love to hear about in our future shows, drop us a line. So my email is turningleafwellness@mac.com, Vanessa C. Naja @gmail. If you want to, send your support, your love, either one of us, we are more than open. And we are back again in 2 weeks, July 23rd, which is your birthday.
Yes, it is.
It's also one of my family members' birthdays too. We keep seeing falling on birthdays. I love that. Everyone, have a great July. Hope you're weathering the heat, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone.